Ladies and gentlemen, the Booth Boys are back. It is Thursday, May 22nd, a rainy one in the big city. Cold, too. Cold. I got the hoodie on. I got Cody here calling in from the Plex. How are things, Sarge?
Brother, I'm so excited to be here today. It's also not so much rain for us today, but it is very foggy, muggy, normal late May. It's Schwab week, so there's always got to be some sort of crazy weather going on. But pumped to be here, brother.
I love it. Of course, thank you, Mr. Jeezy.
Of course.
I feel like I just said to Cody before we started recording, I'm fired up about the agenda today. Got some updates, some goals updates, some big life updates, a few voicemails, some listener feedback. But let's get into it, Cody. What do you need to apologize for? What's your mea culpa this week?
Of course, our mea culpa is brought to you by our presenting sponsor of this year's Trap Draw, ServPro, the #1 brand in cleanup and restoration. It's known for making any mess like it never even happened, with over 2,200 locations nationwide. They're faster than any size disaster. Please visit servpro.com or call 1-800-ServPro today. Neil, I have had a string of audio issues. First of all, I'll talk about NLU Live. Last week we did our first ever live recording, but also when I was going through the listener line, and if people want to listen, we're monitoring the listener line, 833-330-8725. I totally forgot about this.
This is Law School Lenny calling from the great city of Pittsburgh in the Northeast. First, I want Cody to take a moment and think about the booth. You sound like you're calling from a phone booth, like one of those phone booths in 1920. It's just so much, man. That mic, it killed me. And I think you need to make me a culpa. Appreciate it. Love what you guys do. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
I feel like Law School Lenny has some things to apologize for.
Well,
mainly
pronunciation.
Pittsburgh is not in the Northeast, and the pronunciation of mea culpa, but we'll let those slide.
Which immediately threw me off. But I do know exactly the episode that he's talking about. So, we're constantly bouncing around, specifically me, my equipment, my soundboard. When we're traveling for events, all of my audio equipment goes with me that is permanently set up here. So I'm always plugging, unplugging things. And the issue is that we spend so much time at our desks that when I will randomly pop up my phone if I'm watching something on my phone, scrolling, I got sick of having my phone turned up so high. So I Bluetoothed it to my soundboard. The issue is on the last booth recording, Neil, I did not realize this at the time, of course, but my phone mic was selected and not this here microphone mic. So it truly did sound like I was calling in from a tin can. Our audio editor, Phil, called it out as soon as he started the edit and is like, hey, I'm going to try to make this the best possible, but it was tough. So yes, hand up, mea culpa on the tin phone, calling in from the phone booth there. And NLU Live, so excited. I still think it was a smashing success. Everybody that was there loved it, but I learned a ton. I know we've had our debrief afterwards. I've already done an AAR with the rest of my audio team that helps us for all the podcasts that we do at No Laying Up. And man, some great lessons learned on audio during a live event. Just blown out background noises. Our mics are juiced because we got to juice them for the venue, but also that means that people are yelling into the mics and the online live experience gets kind of blown out. So we're learning, baby steps.
A couple thoughts on that. I mean, we went into that. We went into the NLU Live. That was a test. That was intended to, we were cool with this might not go well. That's why we're doing it on Thursday of the PGA Championship when we've got 3 others, scheduled regular programming. So I think we've called out that a lot of people are like, hey, why don't you do your podcast for a live audience? It's like, well, you get stuck in between. It's like, who's it for? And so I think we've done some live events for the people in the room before, and those have gone well, but to do them both together, I think we were, our instincts were right there. That's difficult. Now, I think what we learned is if we had some more equipment, we probably need in-ear headphones, right?
Yep.
That would probably help because yeah, we're talking over each other and it's much more like the audio setup for a band playing a live concert. But listen, that's getting a lot more cooks in the kitchen. So if we did more of these in the future, we would probably have to work with an outside AV company, which is fine. But then it comes back to I really enjoyed last Thursday's live show event, but is that just because we can do it, do we want to? You know, I'm always looking for places where we could burn out. And it's like, so if we signed up for 5 or 10 of those next year, is that something we actually want to do? That's a question for the whole team. But it's nice to know that it's possible and we learned a ton from it. But Cody, you brought up a good point. I think we did a dress rehearsal Wednesday during the happy hour, and that was just the 4 of us with you and kind of same venue but nobody there. And there is some juice from just doing the live show together without the live audience. So we've also talked about, hey, what about in these big weeks if we're not at the event? Do we go to like a undisclosed location and hang out together and do a few shows? So again, I think it served its purpose of like being a test because the podcast has gotten pretty big. Those live show audiences are growing. It's great, but I don't want us to get scared of trying new things. So you got to pick some like sandboxes where you can still, I don't know, test some stuff out where like, yeah, it might not be good. Don't worry. I read the YouTube comments. Like, that was awful. I can't believe they did that. It's like, hey man, tune back in tonight, regularly scheduled programming on Friday. Don't worry about it. Okay. Like, cut me some slack here. So appreciate the mea culpa from you, Cody. I also have one. We put out Strapped a couple weeks ago. Feedback's been very good, but I think my mom summed up some of the feedback that I've been seeing. And I think she told Tron this. She was like, Neil and Randy, they look old and tired. And so I just want to just mea culpa. I'm sorry I'm not younger. Some of the other feedback is like, I just miss the good old days when the boys were struggling around the $500 budget, the soul's gone. And some of it is just like, hey man, I wish I was younger too. I wish I could fix that. We did a really fun Strapped themed Nest pod for our Nest members. That'll go out next week sometime. Yesterday.
Well, hey, Neil, how do people find that podcast?
Well, you can go to nolayingup.com/join to join the Nest. But if you go to our website, nolayingup.com, and go to the Nest section, you can see all the Nest pods. They're video pods there. They'll probably tell you to sign up for the Nest to view it. Or I actually think that you can. We changed it. Now you can get 3, I believe, or 5 pieces of content free if you sign up for the newsletter. So if you're interested in our Strapped, we did a kind of a Q&A, took some questions from Nest members. It was fun. So the Randy, DJ, and I, Cody, you kind of hosted the discussion. That was a fun one. But yeah, the feedback is like, man, the boys have changed. I'm like, yeah, man, it's like 7, 8 years later. I kind of wish I could go back to being 28. That would be fun. So thanks, thanks to Peg, my mother, for calling that out, that I look old and tired. Sometimes, Peg, I feel old and tired, and I apologize for that. So anyway, shout out to ServPro. As always, visit servpro.com or call 1-800-ServPro today. We appreciate them presenting the trap draw. Cody, where are we going next?
Well, I think speaking of trap draw and presenting the trap draw, why these investments and everything matter. Neil, the trap draw is video format. We got it up on the No Laying Up podcast YouTube page. So if people like the video aspect of it, you can go check out trap draws there every episode, basically, unless we do, I don't know, maybe some one-off thing where I'm not there to be able to handle audio and video recording. But, investing in the product, it's the year of the product, and we're going to continue to double down on that and make things that are good already better, and things that need to be elevated move on up. And if that means investing in a tech stack to accomplish those goals, that's what we're going to do. But speaking of goals, Neil, you got any goal updates for me, brother?
I have 2. So on my golf goals list was qualify for the New York or the Met Golf Association Pub Links, the oldest public links competition in the country. I had my qualifier yesterday. I qualified the last 2 years. I did not make the cut, but I played well. We actually filmed it, all 18 holes. We got Kevin. came out and followed me around with the camera, which, you know, at those events is always a little awkward. But some people said hi. My guy Manny saw me in the parking lot. He said hello. My guy Justin, he gave me, it's like his home course. I played at La Tourette on Staten Island. And I've never played golf on Staten Island, never spent a lot of time on Staten Island. It was a delightful municipal golf course. I really liked it. The weather was awful. It was like 50 degrees and raining all day, but I was proud with the way I competed. And that video should come out in the next month or so. So I won't spoil it, but I'm not spoiling anything by saying I didn't qualify, which actually kind of the Pub Links is always the week of the U.S. Open, the Thursday of U.S. Open. So kind of freed me up a little bit on the calendar. I think my wife's happy that I didn't qualify. That's a 36-hole day, you know, a fun one, but a long one. So that's the first one. And then the second one's not really part of the goals list, but I actually, Cody, I thought you'd appreciate this. I think I mentioned on this podcast, I did a little personal retreat back in January, and I created some bigger goals, some like 10, 15-year goals. I spent some time with myself, but I also created an anti-goals list. And I thought that was it was actually a fun process. And this is a, you know, like much like the monitoring list, a list that I'm going to continue to add to. But I wanted to share kind of the high level here. And so the big anti-goals list, what I and then this is what I said in my little document here, what I definitely don't want over the next 15 years. First one on the list, I don't want to get fat. I don't want to weigh more than 200 pounds at any point in the next 15 years. Really, 190 is kind of like my barometer, but like, let's be kind over the next 15 years. If we can keep it below 2 bills, you know, I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on this. Now that could change, right? Oh
yeah.
You know, you start, you know, shouldering a bigger load, family gets bigger, whatever. But there's no way around like the daily or weekly habit that this requires. And so I always found, I remember in college when I was a junior, senior, and you're trying to figure out like what you're going to do after you graduate. It's like, oh, you know, I actually knew more of what I didn't want to do than what I did want to do. So if you start there, I think that it can be helpful. It's like, I knew I didn't want to go into finance. I didn't want to be a management consultant. Okay, cool. So then don't waste your time on those internship programs. And like, you got to jump through all these hoops and play that game. So that's like, close the door, you know? So I found that with the goal stuff, if I'm thinking like longer term outside of like just this year, the anti-goals is helpful. So another one, straight up, I don't want to get divorced. And I call it out.
Good goal.
It's almost like, yeah, obviously, but it's like, I don't think it's a threat.
Think so. No, you bring up a really good talking point here that could, like, we could go all day on this. It's something that you just assume because you're married and you're like, of course I'm committed to this, but you don't realize what everything goes into it. And the fact that like you need to constantly be working on that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was kind of writing down, like, my note was like, I call this out, you know, like, not because I think it's a threat, but like, it just speak it into existence. Like, I don't want that. And I say it about NLU a lot. Like, what's your 5 to 10 year plan? It's like, well, you know, I want to be doing what I'm doing in 5 to 10 years. Like, I want it to exist. And I think the same applies to marriage. Like, what can you do now so that in 5 years you like want to be married? Like, and that's the key word there. It's like, you know, I have to be married, but you gotta like, do you want to be married? It's like, what do you invest in now? And some of the, like, you know, flowers every month, stuff like that. Some of these are almost just putting them on paper so that I can come back to them and be like, am I doing anything short term to ensure that this doesn't happen?
Are you being successful right now?
Yeah, man. I took a little trip down to the Diamond District. Never been there. To get, you know, I was kind of in debt on a push present, so we made good on that promise. But yeah, I'm doing. It's almost like keeping it top of mind. And yeah, we'll get to some other updates where I think I'm investing in that, as you know, in some other ways. Third on the list, I don't want to work for someone else. If it isn't NLU, this is personal, but if it's not NLU, I want it to be something else that I operate, I own, you know. So I don't know what that would be. I don't have a ton of other ideas. So then it's like, okay, well, why don't you make sure that you don't fuck this one up? You know what I'm saying? But I kind of know that about myself. I don't know if And maybe that would change, but I don't feel like it will. So, and that doesn't mean I don't want to work with people. I actually really, really like that part of it, but I don't want it to be like solo, but it's like, I don't want to lose control of this operation. And then I got to jump back into a big shop. And I think it's just important to call stuff like that out. Fourth on the
Well,
list,
I think that's real good because I'll say that's definitely a great spot for yourself to fall in. That's your personality. That's where you want your life to be. I will say this as somebody who works for you, correct? I
sure.
couldn't, we're very like minded in the way that we think about things. We're very like minded in the goals that we have. I think a huge difference here is that I equate a lot of my life to service. Obviously, I served my country for a long time. I put service ahead of a lot of things in my life, and I view my work, my profession now as a lot of still being service oriented. I don't think just because there's people that are out there that are listening to this podcast that are like, yeah, of course, Neil, you own your own business, but will never have the opportunity to own their own business. There might be a failure to launch thing or anything there. There's nothing a matter with that. But I think it's where you find yourself and making the absolute most about what life profession that you're choosing. And I think it goes back to happiness is that you
Yeah.
are most happy running something yourself, being able to mold and craft that. But there's nothing a matter with being the number two guy there, helping that organization do it.
That's exactly right. And I don't want that to come across as like, this is my list.
Correct.
Right. But I also think I try to create, and you correct me if I'm wrong, for you and for anybody that works for us, like an environment where you have a lot of autonomy. You can work from wherever you want. You can go on vacation. Like try to be very black and white about like, this is what you got to get done. And then like, I don't care when and where you do it. And so there's almost like a micro version of this. So like if you
Yeah.
did end up working for if I ended up working for someone else, I would want it to be that I have a lot of autonomy over how, when, where, and what I'm doing. I think that's
Yes.
that's probably more of it, right? It's a little cleaner for me because yeah, like I'm in a position and I'm like, I can't lie about it. I'm thrilled about like, you know, kind of run the business and I really like that. And so I don't want that to sound, you're right. I don't want that to sound like, oh, I have this and somebody else can't, but I think you can have like micro versions of that.
All right, so you obviously structured this company to have flat communication across the board, and that was very, very easy when it was just 5 people in a WhatsApp chat. But as you go on, you add singletons, you get to 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, plus a pretty big freelance crew. Is that going to stay the same forever? Do you see the pros, the cons to that, or how do you kind of view the business now?
I would like it to stay that way as long as possible. I mean, I appreciate transparency, and I always appreciated that when I worked at other companies as much as possible. But you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen, so it's trying to make sure you set up almost like zones of influence for people. I think, but I don't want it to become a hierarchical. I also don't really want to become a big company. People are like, "Oh, you guys are a media company." It's like, yeah, we are, but
Grow.
I don't know. I'm not trying to. I don't know if I'm trying to build something that has 30 people, or that's when it starts to become leveled, and that's just not the type of business we're running. So I hope we can keep it flat as flat as it is. I think this year it's been very good. It feels like there's enough communication. We still, team wide meetings every Monday, but it's a work in progress. Like the communication stuff, I've said it before. It's like it's 100 years war. You're never gonna solve it, man. Like
No.
it's just it's like working out, or stretching. Like the minute you stop doing it, like you go back to where you were. You got to just do it every day. So,
God, especially
um,
in a remote environment too. It's like honestly, it's impressive how invested. The only way it's successful is that the people that you bring out that aren't, owners of the business are as invested in its success as the founders are.
for sure. So anyway, and then the last one I'll mention on my anti goals list is I don't want to get an injury that prevents me from playing golf. I think that I
Ooh,
could be a great golfer into my 60s. I really do. And, so basically trying to think like, okay, that's 30 more years or 25 more years. So it's almost like if you call that out, it's like, all right, don't, I got to avoid stuff that causes wear and tear like that. I can't play rec league hoops anymore. So you got to, at this age, I got to start to pick and choose like what, don't avoid like the high likelihood activities like for injury. And, but I think there's a lot of value in calling these stuff like this out as anti goals. So anyway, that was my goal. That was a lot longer than you were looking for.
No, I love it. How are we keeping these up to date though? Is it a continuation or just more sub bullets as we go along?
Well, I've got this like big goals doc. I'm sorry. I've got this big goals doc, and I'm hoping that I can do this personal retreat thing annually. And this is going to be like my hub for that. It's got my 2025 goals, my bigger long-term ones, my anti goals. They all have like a tab, you know what I mean? So it's just fun to have. I don't know. It's fun to open it up this morning. I haven't looked at it in a couple months, and I'm like, oh, those are like obvious things to write down, but even to just like reflect on those things and write like bullet points underneath the the main thing. I would think that I'll add to this as we go, refine it, maybe add some more big bullet points. But it's just it's almost like organizing what you think is obvious, but when I put it on paper, it makes it feel real.
Incredible. Keep it up. Keep it updated.
What do you
Open it
got?
more than a couple weeks or a couple months at a time. Yeah, this isn't a golf podcast, but I did make golf goals at the beginning of the year, and we are in a really good spot to break every single or accomplish every single one of those golf goals. To include, yesterday I was out playing a little bit of golf, and I'm not going to talk about the golf, but it's one of those days where, Uncle Stu was up and had me out with this golf group, and Stu's an awesome guy, somebody that I was introduced to through you. And it was just an afternoon where he's an awesome friend that checks in way more than he probably needs to. He's constantly checking both how we're doing business wise, but also heavily invested in my family and the success of the girls and school getting out and summer plans. But also, like, he's just an incredible mentor. And I know he's like a big part of YPO, and it's just I think that's it's a really good like skill that he's developed over time, is that he is such a people person and is generally invested in everyone's success that he has in his life. And if I'm sure there's people that are like, "Oh, I don't like that guy." But every single time that I get the opportunity to talk to him or spend time with him, I feel like I'm leaving a better person. And I just wanted to say big shout out to Stu for that. The other thing is a couple sad things. So I'm very much tracking on my running goal for this year. Going to blow it out of the water. I think I brought it down from 1,000 last year to 800. I'm going to beat that. I'm going to be over 1,000 this year. I also talked about signing up for a 50-mile, my first ultra, and I did do that. I'm signed up for at the end of June in
Ooh.
Colorado. So we're running 50
High
miles
altitude.
at altitude, but it's like a very good beginner's ultra that I have a great support system and everything. And my furthest run that I've done so far was last Monday. I did 20 miles before we flew out to Charlotte. Felt great. Worked out a little bit while we are in Charlotte, and then came back. You and I flew back on Saturday, did the rest of PGA Championship live shows, went for another, tried to do 15 on Monday morning, and I know my big toe on my right foot. This is the first like running injury that I have that's kind of flaring up. I don't know what happened. I have something's off. So I'm laying off it for this week. I woke up this morning after playing golf yesterday. It was going to go, just run on the treadmill in the garage. And as soon as like I could barely get a mile in, and I'm like, I got to stop. So I'm calling it now. My training plan, my pathway to this end of June race is in jeopardy if I don't figure out what's going on with my foot, my
Any
toe right
ideas?
away. I have no clue. I hopefully it's just, sore ligaments or something like that. But it's not like plantar fasciitis or anything else going on the bottom of the whole foot. It's like strictly just my big toe on my right foot.
God, I hope you don't have the like Bill Walton or KD,
That
like Liz Frank stuff.
that would be
All right, well, go
tough,
get it checked
tough
out,
for your
man.
guy. I know, I will. And then the other two things, obviously, I made a goal at the beginning of the year that I wanted to spend more time with my elderly dog, Freddie. And I'm so happy that I made that goal because we did. We went on a lot more walks. We went to the park a lot more. We spent a lot more time cuddling. And he ended up passing away about, well, like honestly, like almost a month ago now. And it was very unexpected for us the way that it came about. We knew that he was getting old, but I honestly thought that he was just going to be the pup that kind of like goes outside one day and just kind of lays underneath his tree and doesn't come back in.
Sure.
And that's not really what happened at all. He was playing with me during the morning, like having a great time. I came into the office for a couple calls, and by the afternoon, he was still out on his couch, like sleeping like he normally does. And when he woke up, he was just kind of like super lethargic and out of it. And what ended up happening is he was out of it that night. He didn't eat his food. I was like, well, maybe I'll just let him sleep it off, see how he's doing the next morning. And the next morning we woke up, he was still very much out of it. So took him up to the vet, not even our vet, which is a separate story. I feel like vet clinics are extremely overrun if they can't even get their own like patients in anymore. So I had to
Sure.
go to an emergency vet clinic. Thankfully I did. And they took a couple scans of him. They're like, yeah, there's some pretty big masses on his spleen, I think. Maybe it was his liver. I think it was started as a spleen. And they're like, well, we can have those removed, and I was, kind of moaning and groaning in our internal Slack about how much it was going to cost me because they hit me with like an 8K bill, which I was like, yep, it's worth it for Freddie. And as soon as they cut him open, they're like, hey, they called me from the operating room and they're like, hey, what we thought was his spleen. Once we got in there, there's, cancerous mass all over his liver, his bladder, basically everywhere. So they're like, I think you guys need to come up here. So me and Yari go up there and we're able to say goodbye to him. There was nothing that they could have done. They could have put him together, back together, which they did for us. And we got to hang out with him for a couple hours, but ultimately he wouldn't have made it very much longer at all. So it's very hard for us to go through. He's the dog that's been there for every single welcoming home from all of my deployments going back to, 2010, and just an awesome dude. It was also the pup that, the girls grew up with. So they're very attached to him. And it was their first experience with death. And it was interesting to, Yari and I talking and trying to figure out how we were going to, tell them what happened and get them to make sure that they're okay. And they're obviously heartbroken and, a couple, really hard days. And then they started to feel a little bit better. But our other dog, Cole, was still very depressed. He stopped eating. And, you know, even before Freddie passed, we had planned on getting another puppy. Like we've always had 3 dogs and we were down to 2 for a couple years now. And the girls really wanted a puppy. And I told Yari when Freddie passed, I was like, hey, let's wait till the end of summer. Let's enjoy summer. And then the way that the girls were acting and how Cole was really acting, we made the decision. So we got a new puppy. So we got a little wiener dog now, which
Hell
is
yeah.
awesome. That's kind of cranked the mood back up in the house. Everybody's thoroughly enjoying life and it's
Did the
kind of
girls
back to
react?
normal,
Did the girls react differently?
very differently. So the twins who are most attached to him, I thought were going to be the most upset. Nina, our youngest, has always kind of been like, oh, yeah, that's cool, Freddie. But like, Freddie doesn't really play with her. And she's, they've kind of had a hit or miss relationship. So the twins, we were expecting to be extremely emotional about it, literally laughed. They're like, it was Easter, just coming off of Easter weekend. they laughed and they're like, "Oh, Freddie's in heaven now. Good for him." And we're like super happy about it. And then I looked at Nina, who I thought was going to be the one that like not really care, and she was absolutely heartbroken. She cried for like 3 days. She went to school and told her class, and they all cried with her. And like it was just the complete opposite reactions than we thought they were going to have. So we made it through it though. The other sad update is that I think a year ago, maybe it's 2 years ago now, I first talked about my neighbor Larry and the hole that he was digging in his backyard, and over time we realized that Larry had, had dementia, and there's some things that were off with him, and I didn't really, dig too much deeper into it. I'd get
No pun
a lot
intended
of
on dig.
yeah, I'd get a lot of updates from my neighbor Charlie. Charlie's an older guy, retired law enforcement officer, and knew Larry very well. And Larry ended up passing away a couple months ago. And
Damn.
yeah, and it's one of those things where we joked about it, but Larry's family decided to have an estate sale. And I
Really?
decided Saturday morning, hey, I'm gonna go over there, get in the truck, drive over to Larry's house and check out the estate sale and see what does he have in there. I'm still fascinated by this whole what was he digging to, what was he trying, and I kind of grew up by this guy in Montana that was like that too, had a ton of like, you know, radio, weird radio stuff going on that he thought he can communicate with anything. So I knew Larry was kind of going to be like that. What I found out though is man, it makes you think like I wish I would have took the time to go over and talk to Larry more. Is Larry was a United States Marine Corps vet. He served in Vietnam. He was a radio operator in Vietnam, had a Purple Heart from being injured in Vietnam. He came back, worked in the oil fields for a bit before he settled back down here south of the Plex where we're at. Had a great, was married for his same girl that he, started dating at 14 years old. And she's still there. And her name's Rhonda. And she was awesome and was telling stories about Larry and everything else like that. And I asked her about the hole, and she said he was trying to build a swimming pool for their great grandkids,
Okay.
and which makes a lot of sense. And she said that, when he started posting questions about it on, he originally started posting questions about it on Facebook, but he didn't get any, nobody ever really responded to him because it's just like friends and family on there. So he went to Nextdoor, and she is absolutely knows what's going on. And she's like, I read every single one of those comments that people thought that he was losing his mind, which he kind of was, that people assumed that he was trying to drill for oil and all this crazy stuff. And she's like, yeah, he kind of got overwhelmed by the whole situation and stopped checking and replying to it. So yeah, you just never know who your neighbors are. But I'm very fortunate that I went back over there and got a
You
little
get
bit more
anything from the
information
estates?
about him.
You pick up anything at the estate sale?
I didn't. I just came back with a bunch of stories, and I felt like that was the best way to kind of leave it.
Well, shout out to Larry and to Rhonda. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. Cody, I'm a little worried about, and shout out to Freddie, obviously.
Of course. Thank you.
Gonna give my pup Sonny a big hug after this. So I'm worried about your 50 miler because I want you to do it because I think it's a great time to call out. I'd love to see the Whoop stats or that. And this podcast is
Mm.
sponsored by Whoop, and the new Whoop is here. It's kind of all the rage in my my strenuous Whoop group chat. Whoop 5.0 is here with tons of new features, including a 14+ day battery life. That makes 2 different Whoops options for you and 3 different member categories to choose from. So they've got some new membership options. It looks really sweet.
Yep.
We've been wearing Whoop for a few years and we love it. And you've probably seen it on our wrist or our biceps at some point in some of our videos. The pros wear it. We're not pros, but using Whoop has definitely helped me hit my health goals. And I love looking at the stats after big physical activities. Would love to see what you've got cooking after the 50 miler. So get healthy, man. It helps with sleep, recovery, fitness related stuff all year long. I think they've upped some of the I think there's like a tier called the life tier, like some health monitoring stuff. So I think it's a really useful tool. at least for me, just to check in on like, how we feeling? Are we healthy? Are we sleeping enough? You know, are we doing the right things to not get fat in the next 15 years? That's what Whoop's helping me with. So go to join.whoop.com/NLU to get started with Whoop on a free 1-month trial. That includes the hardware and a completely unlocked app experience. If you don't love it, you can send it back. No questions asked. If you already have a Whoop, join our Whoop group with code COMM, COMM -NLU. We'll probably be running another 10 strain challenge at some point. Maybe late this summer. I gotta get the 5.0 popping. I'm still
I
rocking
know.
the 4.0, which is great, but the 14-day battery life is exciting.
That could be
It's
a
like
game
5,
changer.
6 right now, but 14, that's one thing I love about Whoop. You don't even have to worry about charging it every night. So, you know, a 2-week battery life is awesome. So anyway, that was join.whoop.com/NLU.
On my 20-mile day, I hit 19.3 strain.
Love it. Rarely do you get, you go about 20, you're kind of in the danger zone. 21, I think you spontaneously combust. I think it's impossible to get to 21 on the strain.
All right. Yeah. Thanks to Whoop. I'm excited. Can't wait to get the new band in hand. Neil, you have some big stuff going on. How's life going, brother?
Life is good. We are we're making a big change. I am under contract on a home. I'm going to become a
Whoa.
homeowner. So, got a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff I'm doing over the next month or two. Then that's even before we start with the moving stuff and all the other joys that come with home ownership. But I'm moving out to New Jersey later this summer, this year. I'm very excited. Honestly, 1 for 1, put an offer down and we got it. So that's exciting. After, you know what I did, Cody? I unsubscribed from all my Zillow custom searches, because what I don't want is to start feeling grass is greener. This is kind of the
Yep.
time, school's out, people are putting their house on the market, want to move, get out of there over the summer when the kids are out of school. I don't want to be looking at other houses. I found my house. We're happy with our house. Don't worry about it. There's always a bigger house. There's always a better house. I don't like to live my life that way. So that was step 1.
Well,
Stop looking at Zillow.
congratulations.
Thank you.
First and foremost, that's huge news. Obviously, we've talked a lot about it. You've been a notorious renter. So
notorious rent.
Why
An expert on overpaying for small spaces. An expert.
why are we finally getting pushed out? Are we looking for space? Are we looking for quality of life? What are we leaving the city for? Because I think you invested some good years.
I did, and I've enjoyed it. I think if a good reference point is when Randy came to visit and we did the city tour last September. He and I talked about it a lot. I've really enjoyed my time in New York City this last run. So the past 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. But this winter, it was a kind of a long, cold, rainy winter in New York. And with the 1-year-old, with little Pete, that started to get a little tight in the apartment. All this stuff, like to go outside, just, you got to put them in like 4 layers. And I had felt like, man, I'm feeling a little trapped. And we've talked about it before. I don't think we're taking advantage of the city as much as we used to. I think the city might be taking advantage of me a little bit. And Carson's parents live out there, so moving out closer to them, and I love them, so that's been really good. And are there other places that you could circle and be like, I would like to live? Sure, but I can pretty much be happy living anywhere. And so I wanted to pick a spot, low friction. Let's start with this, and then if we don't like it, you can always make a change in the coming years. But yeah, I'm trying to get a little bit more space. I'm trying to get a little closer to golf for me personally.
Yep.
And a little bit more space, home office space, things like that. So I'm really excited about the home ownership journey. I got to get through this experience, though. I would add it to my list of Neil's the high school course that I want to teach, the kind of potpourri
Civics,
the adult stuff that they don't teach you. This would be a week-long chapter in that curriculum, which is like, so first off, I'm lucky. My mother-in-law is a real estate agent, and she's fantastic. And she's one of the top New Jersey real estate agents. And so she's been very helpful, but there's so much stuff that like there's not really just one contact. Then I got the real estate lawyer. Then you got the title people. Then you got the mortgage people. Then I got to get the home insurance. So I feel like I'm just balancing like 8 different contacts and, just collecting all the paperwork for all this stuff. The last 2 years of pretty much like anything tax or financial. It's just like, yep, guys, here, just go through it. Then of course getting people at my credit's getting dinged because people are looking it up, which is such bullshit. These credit agencies are they're such cowards. It's like, oh, you're going to ding my credit because you guys had to do a little bit of work because somebody looked up my credit. It's like same thing with like, oh, I paid off a debt early, so now that's going to ding my credit. That happened to me years ago. I just think that's such a skeezy business. But anyway, everything's progressing, but it's just like little incremental stuff every day. And it's just really time consuming is really what it is. But I feel really confident about, I don't know. I feel like I've been very patient with this. I was probably ready to buy a home 4 years ago, but it was like, I don't want to buy something. I feel like I may have skipped the starter home thing, so I almost got stuck in limbo a little bit. And I at this point, didn't want to buy a house I didn't want, but I also don't want to get out over my skis financially. So you got to be patient. And I think that I've done that. And, I feel good about it. I was struggling with I kind of got a curveball. Everything was going well until a couple days ago. I was trying to, it was like, oh, you got to go find homeowners insurance or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. So I start like trying to, you basically need a quote to keep the mortgage moving to prove that like you can get insured. And nobody's like, I was kind of just going to I was trying to get one online, and it kept being like, no, we can't do it. You got to call us. And so the house that I'm buying was basically rebuilt in 2020. So it's everything's pretty much brand new, 5 years old, but it was built on an old foundation of a farmhouse from 1900. And I think the reason they did that is because permitting is a lot easier, because they could say it was a renovation instead of a new home, I guess, is what I'm learning. But all the like kind of standard homeowners insurance, anything you can get online was like, oh no, we can't insure a house from 1900. And I'm like, no, you don't understand.
That's new, man.
It's new. I just did the home inspection, and the home inspection was actually sweet. I drove out on Monday expecting, mentally prepared for this, because these inspectors, they're like, you're paying them to find every little thing. So they're not going to sugarcoat anything. And this guy was great. He was like, I was kind of like his little mentee. I followed him around for like 3 hours. We went through everything in this house, and I was expecting him to show me all these warts, and he was getting all jacked up about like, man, it was rebuilt by this company, like Scandic Builders, who's does good work out in the northern New Jersey area. And he was like, man, I love these guys at Scandic. They do little stuff. Look at these jousts under the deck, and look at like he got all jacked up about how they installed the plumbing, where you can like turn off specific faucets or areas of the house without turning all the water off. And he's like, see, this is great. So if you have a problem with one toilet, the plumber doesn't have to turn off everything. He can just cut water to this,
individual line.
He's like, look at this air filtration system you got. Like, this is top of the line stuff. He's up in the attic with the flashlight and headlamp. And so I was like, okay, this is great. So he, passed the home inspection, flying colors. And, I asked my mother-in-law, like, does this normally go this way? She's like, oh no, it's normally a shit show. Like, you get in there and there's just like mold in the crawl space, and like there's a leak in the back corner of the basement, and like it turns into just like a battle of, who's going to fix what. And oh my God, radon levels are way too high. And, the sump pump isn't sealed, all this stuff that you just like, oh my God, just take it all away. So none of that stuff. And so I come off of that trying to get this homeowner's insurance. And I'm like, can I get someone on the phone that will listen? Because everybody I was talking to, like, oh no, man, like, sorry, our, actuaries, they're not going to insure that. Sorry. And so, but I finally found a guy, like a homeowner's insurance broker. It's kind of like when you find your guy. This guy was like, okay, this is how it works. And he, I talked to him yesterday, and, I don't know, it's probably going to cost me more, but I'm just like, at least I feel good because I don't want to skimp on insurance at this point. You know what I mean? I want to feel like I want to sleep well at night. Like if something really bad happened, that I'm not going to get screwed or some guy's going to come out and be like, sorry, we can't cover this. So anyway, so far so good, but it is one of those adult experiences that nobody really explains it to you. And then you're like, okay, who should I call about this? And it's just like, so my answer to that is
Kind of
I
like
kind of
leaving the
just,
hospital with a newborn. People
it
just
is. Yeah.
expect
Or
you to
doing
be
your
like, yeah, you got
taxes.
it.
Yeah. Or, or like how a 401k works when you're 23 and how important it is to start doing that immediately after college. Like
What do you
nobody
mean you
really,
want $20 of my money a month? That's
yeah.
bullshit, man.
So overall it's going well, but yeah, we're cooking on that, man.
I'm so happy for you. I think it's awesome. You kind of made your last stand the last couple years in the city. I think you got everything you possibly could out of it.
Yeah.
And as you're going through this process, I think I've talked about it before. Yari and I, we've had this is either house 12 or 13. I can't remember. We've gone through it a lot. I think one of the most important things that you told me is you being there on inspection day and understanding everything about the structure and the property that you're purchasing.
Oh, I took a
Because
bunch of notes, man.
I guarantee you, there's people. I have neighbors that come over all the time and like, oh, this is my sprinkler. Every spring somebody's like, my sprinklers, and we know that you're like the yard guy because your stuff's always dialed. Can you come over and tell me what's going on? I'm like, well, did you like winterize your irrigation? And they just look at me like they don't even know what that means. I'm like,
Huh?
oh, okay, cool. Well, let's go find where your water line's at and then where the tie-in is to your sprinkler system, and we'll work back from there. And like I'm going out and pulling up, you know, irrigation covers and going over to breaker boxes and things like that. And they're like, I have no clue this is where any of this stuff's even at. And I'm like, well, that's an issue, man.
Yeah, you need to,
Because this is a huge investment that you should know about.
and
Care care of
I've
your shit.
always been in these rental properties where I've almost hated when something goes wrong in my apartment. Like my natural inclination is like I would like to fix it, but I'm like
Mhm.
not allowed to. And so it's like, but then it turns into like, it doesn't get fixed very proactively. So that's annoying. I was like, I'd rather just pay for it myself and just get it done.
Yep.
Now, I guess we'll see how I feel about that when in 3 months when I have to do that. But no, I think I've lived here this last time in New York City, knowing it's the last run, and I think I've taken advantage of it. Maybe not as much in the last 6 months, but now I have basically, and it's going to work out well where our lease will be up in September. So you pay your last month's rent. I paid that 3 years ago. So basically August, happy that allows me to move over the course of like 2.5 months. So I think I told Carson, I was like, let's make a list of things we want to do in the next 2.5, 3, 4 months. And listen, we're moving 45, 50 minutes away from the city. It's not like we can't come in and have some fun whenever.
Yeah, but you've lived the city life. It's become your routine, and there's things that you always are like, oh, we should do that next weekend, and you just never really get around to it. I
100%.
completely understand why you guys would make a list and be like, you know what, let's check this shit out before we move out to the burbs.
And like what I said to Randy last September was I get a lot of joy out of knowing in the moment, like this is temporary. So you should, like, I feel like I've been very conscious of that for the last year or two of like, don't, whereas when I lived here, in the past, when I was younger, you just take the city stuff for granted. So I haven't gotten to the point where I've been, where your mindset changes and you're just like, oh, I wish I didn't live here. I haven't been negative
Good.
about it. But I just know it's starting to be like, man, I'm ready for a different lifestyle than this. I mean, one being like, come back from golf yesterday. And it's like, I'm ready to not search for a parking spot on the street. I'm very ready to know where I'm going to park my car when I get home. That's like one of those things where you're like that, it's not even moving it for street clean. That doesn't even bother me. It's just like, God, I'm coming back on a Thursday at, 1 p.m. That's going to be tough to find a spot to put this rig.
How long did it take you?
I got lucky. Sometimes you get lucky, which is also kind of a cheap thrill. I was like, oh, someone's pulling out on my street. Let's go, you know, in a Wednesday spot. I can leave it here for 6 days. This is great.
It's
So,
going to
yeah.
be very interesting to see the rest of your friends who still live in the city as you guys move out, how long it kind of takes them. Because I know
Yeah.
you have a lot of your friends are still in there, you know, sister-in-laws, everything else
Mhm.
like that. You know, it'll be interesting to see when the mass commute happens.
Yeah, and everybody's on their own timeline. But I feel in my gut, I feel like it's time, it's the right move. I feel like I'm being proactive about it. It's not a defensive move where, you know, we absolutely 100% need more space. And so I'm not doing it after the fact. I'm not being reactive, which is what I'm excited about. So
Happy for you and see Pete. Really sunny. I mean, Sunny's has a whole brand new smells.
yeah, exactly. Some grass. Get my guy on some grass. Get Sunny a little bit more room to maneuver.
You know, it's
Uh,
funny. You talked about space. We have one of the listener line questions came in. Drew's calling from Richmond with a really good question. And I think you can answer now
well,
based off
before
of.
we do, because we're talking about, you know, high quality appliances and shit, I do want to talk about something else that's high quality, and
Oh,
that's H&B, Holderness and Bourne clothing. H&B Spring 2025 collection is live on hbgolf.com. We've got fresh color stories such as Fusion, Deep Teal, Citron, Marlin Blue, Liberty Red, Scotch Pink. Listen, best tagline in apparel right now: micro perforations, macro comfort. That's what you're getting from H&B. They've got the Tilly, their first quarter zip hoodie. That's versatile on and off the golf course. I actually played golf with Alex Holderness a couple weeks ago and knocked off another goal up at Siwanoy in Bronxville.
nice.
Delightful Donald Ross track. We had an awesome day. Alex was really fired up about the spring and the fall 2025 collection that'll be coming out probably like late, like August. He said a lot of earth tones going on, but he said the spring collection's doing really, really well. And I would be remiss if I didn't shout out the Wallace hoodie, which we are both wearing. Cody's got the navy one on. I've got the black one on. It's basically the Ward sweater, but with a hood. This was John Bourne's baby here. I think Alex said he walked into the office. He's like, well, what if we put a hood on the Ward sweater? You think that would do well? Turns out it's like their best selling product. So highly, highly recommend the Wallace hoodie. And I'm also wearing an H&B t-shirt underneath this Wallace hoodie. Soft quality t-shirts. If you're into that kind of thing, check them out. Use code TRAP, TRAP10 at hbgolf.com for 10% off your first order. One of the only discounts on the market for H&B. And if you're a Nest member, go to your profile, nolayingup.com/profile. There is a H&B code for hbgolf.com in there for Nest members. That's good through the end of the year. So if you're looking to update the wardrobe with some micro perforations and macro comfort apparel, check them out. All right, Cody, let's get to Drew.
This is Drew from Richmond, Virginia. Got a question for really whoever wants to answer it, whether it be the trap draw, the booth, or anyone else. I'm curious what y'all's day-to-day business day looks like. I remember always asking my dad as a kid what he did each day at work. So I'm very curious, besides the podcasts and the videos and travel for the videos, what do y'all do on an average daily basis? I'll hang up and listen. Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, I could take that one, Cody. You want me to take that one?
Yeah, fire it up.
I would say on a kind of standard day, today is a good example. I mean, it's not much different on, you know, it won't sound much different than what I was doing at Google or before. Like or people listening, probably your standard day job. I answer a lot of emails. I religiously try to knock out my to-do list week to week. And we have a lot of meetings. That's kind of where we go. But I guess today, normal day, I probably get up 6:15, between 6:15 and 6:30, take the dog out, feed the dog, start the coffee. By 6:45, 7, Carson's getting little man up, and we're kind of passing him back and forth. in that little time frame, I try to clear out the inbox. I'm a zero inbox guy. So I try to read, delete, or star, and I'll get, I get back to the starred ones later on. But I try to keep, when the starred list gets up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, we know we got to basically schedule an hour at some point later in the week to knock some of those out. Hang with the little man while Carson gets ready for work. So that's probably 7:15 to 8:30. Then our nanny comes. Dee Dee is awesome. So she comes. Then I top off my coffee, and that's when I lock in. Usually start with the to-do list. I've got some docs that I kind of keep up, which is or some windows in my browser. Email, calendar, and to-do list, which I keep in a notes app, and then kind of what we call the central nervous system. Try to keep that up to date or reference that. That has like who's on the podcast, like just kind of the macro schedule for the podcast, sponsor stuff, just kind of everything we track is in there. It's a massive document, but trying to keep that up to date. I'd like to, if possible, do like some type of creative stuff in the morning on that from that to-do list. So, or a podcast like this. So it's, we started this one at 10 a.m. I'm much better, much sharper in the morning. That's when I'm at my best, I think, most focused. An example of something off the to-do list is like right now I have to create 2 pre-production guides for upcoming video projects in June. So that's kind of the who, what, when, where, and then kind of the at least the macro schedule for a trip. So I have 2 that I'm kind of spearheading. So I'll kind of put together a Google Doc for those, make sure that Ben has it, make sure that whoever's filming it has it, and whoever, the participants are.
And I will say, just so people are like, wait a second, you're putting this together now. You said June, that's like in a week. All the coordination, scheduling, everything is done. It's literally just like the master sheet that everybody can work off of. So everybody has all the information, but like planning and everything's been done.
Scheduling's already been done. So that means that like it's already on the calendar, but then you got to like zoom in on, okay, what time are we playing golf? Okay, we got to book tee time. So now I got to reach out to whatever course or whoever our contact is at that course. And then for Ben, it's like there's a gear list, right? So it's figuring out like if Ben's filming it, he's bringing X, Y, and Z. But if somebody else is, I have some mics or I have a camera, like what do I need to bring? So it's making sure that we like get ahead of that stuff. And usually 2-3 weeks out, sometimes you can't plan some of these things until it's a month out or so. So that's like an example of something that I, you just got to kind of schedule time to do those things. I try to schedule calls from like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I try to, as a group, but me specifically, try to front load things. So early in the week, Mondays are our big internal team call meetings, content, social call. You and me always have our little weekly one-on-one at 11 a.m. on Mondays. And then the big team call is 2 p.m. every Monday. We have a little content brainstorm call before that at 1 p.m. And then as the week goes on, Tuesday, Wednesday are kind of big for me for partner check-ins. You and I trying to, stay up to date, making sure we're knocking out deliverables, getting what we need from sponsors. And then Thursday, Friday, I try to keep relatively open. A lot of times, so I had to go, I played in the pub links yesterday. So Wednesday was a bit of a wash because it's always hard to come back from those and like work in the afternoon. So I try to leave those open. I'm able to like knock out some stuff, but I don't have to be I wasn't on any meetings yesterday afternoon. So then Thursday becomes a bit of an overflow day. So I got some calls this afternoon. And then, Friday is when I try to do, especially Friday morning is a really good time for me to do like bigger projects. Like, okay, we got to do a proposal or we have to put together a big recap deck or I got to do some HR stuff, like whatever it is. So I think the day-to-day, what I like about it is that it's different every day. Like I'll have to, some long-term project is we have some tech web development stuff that I need to jump back in on, or Casey and I will schedule a brainstorm on like how are we doing on Nest stuff? What video, like let's get ahead of, Nest exclusive videos and what do we want to do for the Nest podcast for the next 3 months? getting better at staying ahead of that stuff, but I'm able to bounce around to different stuff. It's like, okay, we're going to record a booth. And then after this call, I'm going to go and, I'm going to talk to Erin this afternoon about some event planning stuff, so she has what she needs. And then, or maybe it's Jordan is putting the newsletter out tomorrow. So I need to provide some feedback or, help her get ahead of the schedule for the next month. So that would be kind of the standard day. I think the difference from what I was doing before is like I said earlier, I have a lot of control over my time. So, I can work from home. I can go to a coffee shop. Nobody kind of, I have deadlines I have to hit, but like I can get to those deadlines on my own, which I value deeply, as a, I don't know. That's really matters more to me than like the, the money stuff. Is like I can just kind of operate and control my time, and I really like that. And then I think the other piece of it that would be different is this feeling that I've always had, which is if I don't do it, nobody will. Like there's no cavalry, right? So if like I ask Cody to do something or I ask Ben to do something, it's like if he doesn't do it, it's not like there's just someone like at a big company at Google. It's like, yeah, if I don't do this, it's not really going to matter. It's like, no, if you don't do it, because we don't do a lot of stuff we don't have to do. So it's like that's very motivating. So I don't worry as much about like a lot of what I do sounds mundane, but there's like an added urgency and value because it's like, well, you just have to do it. So I don't even waste my time thinking about like, oh, I don't want to do that. Whereas at Google, it used to be like, I don't want to update my Salesforce forecast, And now it's like, well, no, I update the business forecast like weekly. Do I want to go through and like update my notes in column H? Not really, but it's like, I got to do it. Like stay on top of it. There's just, that doesn't even really cross my mind because I know that if I don't do that, like that's how things slip through the cracks and that's going to cause problems down the road. I've seen it happen. I don't want it to happen. It's just better to stay ahead of it. But yeah, it's a lot of Google Sheets, emails, and Google Docs for notes. That would probably sum up my my normal day.
Sounds about right. I think the only thing that would change there for you is that both you and I are in a unique position where we probably spend 80% of our effort working on the business as opposed to, the 20% that is the business and that's creating content. Whereas, a lot of the rest of the guys, that's probably flipped for them. They spend a lot more time on the creative side of things, thinking through, brainstorming, aligning guests, things like that. But I'll meet you there. I think this is an interesting week to talk about this. And I'm actually going to start on Sunday because Sunday being the final round of a major championship. Obviously, we had everybody come through the show on Sunday. And I think a lot of people think that we can just fire it up and like let it rip as soon as coverage starts, or ends, but that's not the case at all. So like Sunday morning, I am starting to put the framework into that night's agenda. And that includes getting updated ad copy and figuring out segments that we're going to run and finalizing what the graphics package is going to be. And then try to do some family stuff that morning into early afternoon before you have to be like locked into coverage and monitoring coverage and continuously refining what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, where it all fits into the show, all the way up to like the most stressful part of that is like the last hour of coverage into show start, because as you're trying to be 100% locked in and engaged to coverage, you also have like your job is finally starting to begin, even though you've been working on this for 8 hours already. You do the show for me, produce the whole thing. I get done. And then, all of those files, somebody has to put them together and publish and clean them up and get them out to the world. And that takes me another 2 hours, sometimes 3, depending on how big the show is, before I can finally go to bed. So you're looking at like those live show days get super fucking long.
Yeah, they do.
And you
I think
bring
that
up
would be the difference with like, it's almost more because we do have to work on the weekends.
Yep.
It's almost more like a doctor of being on call a little bit. And I think we do a pretty good job. Not so much you probably take the brunt of this with all the back end production stuff, but as far as some weeks, some big weeks, I'm more plugged in than others, I guess. So I think we've gotten better at like sharing the load on the live show stuff.
100%. And I think that comes through in the content for sure. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I'm sure there are going to be people that are like, wait a second, you started talking about meeting times on Monday and your first call was at 11 a.m. and you don't meet as a team until the afternoon. I'm like, yeah, because we work till like a minimum of 9 p.m. on Sunday night. But like when West Coast events absolutely blow for us because we're
Yeah.
up to like midnight, 1 a.m. And then you got to turn that over and do partner and sponsor reporting, like starts as soon as emails start Monday morning. It's just a ton. I think about this a lot because, I think from you being East Coast and all the East Coast crew are very good at not starting to blow up like Slack or emails too early
I've
because
gotten better at that.
correct. But I think what really resonated with me was like Casey talking about her move from Philly to Vegas and knowing that like obviously that's a personal decision and everything that goes along with that for her. But the feeling that she has like when she wakes up in the morning and like she knows that once she's done with her morning routine and she actually opens her phone or sits down at her computer, that she feels like she's 3-4 hours behind everybody.
Yeah. I used to feel that way when I lived in San Francisco. You just feel like you're behind. There's no way around it. I didn't ever like that feeling. But then in the afternoon, you feel
But
like
the
you have
freedom.
some freedom to knock things out. It almost like inverts that's why I think in the morning, I know from, 7 to usually like 9:30, like no one's really going to bug me, which is a nice feeling. But it's just different on the West Coast. We used to have our team meeting at 11 a.m.
We did.
A change we made, I think, probably a year ago.
Well, it was
Based
when Randy moved.
when Randy moved. Yeah, based on feedback from the team of like, hey, everybody's like, it'd be nice to be able. It's not like we sleep in on Monday. It's like
Mm-mm.
everybody just needs a morning to catch up and like clear the decks on like promo from the podcast and just read the internet, and kind of like get
Yeah.
back to square one.
It's funny
So
because I use Monday mornings. Like I have to make all of the graphics for our entire podcast for that week. So both pod art as well as YouTube thumbnails and pending if it's live show banners and overlays and things like that. But it's always funny because like we have a schedule this in the central nervous system, but I do like a first guess at what it's going to be, fully knowing that like, oh, once we get ready to publish this on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, like it's going to change a little bit. But it's always a fun game for me to be like, okay, we got the chop session. I wonder what the boys are going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Is it astrology? Are we talking global transportation? Like, let's see what we can get creative with.
it is dynamic, which is why the Monday meetings are so important to like reaffirm, is it a ball knowers this week? Or,
Yeah.
because we flip things around, a lot of variables with, maybe a podcast guest or somebody's like, hey, I could really use a day off, or I can't make this pod. Can someone like pop in for me instead on, Sunday night? So I think we do a pretty good job with that stuff.
And everybody's getting better at like, you work at a job that really does not have a start or end time. You're never really like on the clock. Your day doesn't start at 9 and end at 5. And you're also working 7 days a week. But I think people are getting better at calling out their days. And I know I
that's
still
where
need
the
to
calendar,
get better at it.
I was in the early days of NLU. I was so, and when I, my previous career, I was so resistant to the calendar. And I don't know, like, that's what I do on Monday mornings. I update, check the calendar. I move, I try to block off times when I know it's like, okay, I got to get this done this week. All right, Wednesday afternoon, like we're putting on a big DNS. Like, don't come at me on Wednesday. So yeah, because I know we do work like weekends, especially this time of year for this big stretch from Masters to US Open. This is our like, burnout alert time of the year. That's why I don't care. I'm not trying to check like, are you at your desk on Monday morning? Like,
Right.
like yesterday, you go play golf with Stu. Hell yeah, man. Like, cause I know you're going to get it done. Like you and I both know like what we got to get done this week and what could leak into next week, or I could get done on my own time Friday afternoon. I think that's the general understanding that I love having with like across the whole team of just like what's like vital that we have to get done as quickly as possible, and what's more, just, hey, get it done by this date.
Yeah, for sure. And continuously, trying to find ways to improve. Speaking of improvement, listen, I'm back in this fucking self-help kick. Where's that? Right there. This is what I'm consuming, dog. Just started this. Greg Harden,
Harden.
longtime
know him.
Michigan man. So he's like I think he tried to play basketball or football or something like that in college, but ended up going in and became a very successful, started as a counselor and then became kind of like a performance coach. But I say Michigan man because if anybody's ever gone through University of Michigan from, Desmond Howard to Tom Brady, like he's basically like their guy. He's the guy that they go to for advice and things like that. Tom Brady wrote the forward for it, but incredible, life lessons and like, I think everybody has like good ideas and what they want to do, what they want to achieve in their life. But, it's funny with some of these motivational speakers that you see, and like everything nowadays just gets boiled down to like a 30-second quote or reel on Instagram. Like there's absolutely like substance here. And I'm picking up so much from it. But I wanted to shout that out. That's what I'm consuming. What are you getting into, Neil?
You know what? I'm going to shout out a show, The Pit. It's on HBO or
I
Max.
loved it.
I am such a sucker for procedural dramas, and this one hit the spot for me. I think outside the main guy and maybe a couple of the supporting actors, the acting is pretty bad. So I'm going to warn you on that one. But I really enjoyed the pace of the show, the like format. It's basically just following one shift at the hospital, and in an ER in Pittsburgh, and the hospital jargon is just magnetic, man. 40 cc's of blah blah blah, this, that, the other. Let's intubate. Let's do this. Let's do that. I binged that one over the last couple weeks with Carson. It was good, and I just think, when we look around at all these streaming options and all these different shows, it's not complicated, man. A good procedural and this one, like more so than Grey's Anatomy, it was less soap opera-y, and I appreciate that. Like there are some storylines I'm like, we didn't really need that one, but just enjoyed it. No, nothing else. It was just good, kind of take your mind off the day. I'm gonna fire this show up for a couple hours before bed. Kind of exactly what I'm looking for from a streaming package. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you're into that kind of thing, I would check out The Pit.
Nah, great call. We absolutely loved it as well. It's on HBO Max, whatever it's called. But the guy, Dr. Robbie, who's everything kind of is based around, he like wrote and is the EP of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a true story. It's about this very well-known emergency room physician in Pittsburgh, and that's kind of where they pull a lot of the stuff from. But
I'll have to do a little bit more digging on that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And obviously there's some characters in there that I'm like, oh, come on. I can't remember which her name is, but I was just like, God, do we have to be like that person all the time? Like,
oh yeah, definitely one of the like
the new ones.
The new ones. Yeah, she stunk. Oh,
and I'm like,
God.
oh.
But maybe that made her like playing a good character, because some of the other ones are like, oh, she, annoying for a different reason. But it was just because I don't, I'm not super familiar with the healthcare sector and industry. It was a good, it's just always nice little surface level peek behind the curtain.
But of course, appreciate everybody, people that are working in healthcare. It seems like a grueling job. So I'm sure that there's plenty of things that they sharpshoot in here that they got wrong. But you're right. Anything that's like,
it just honestly, I've said this before, but it emphasizes for me that I think the most important and unbelievable, if you really think about it, modern innovation is anesthesia. in
Yeah.
human history. I just think about that, man. They just knock people out. They disassociate the brain with pain. And then they can just chop and screw and just like fix people without them feeling anything. Like that is so wild. And if you look
Yeah.
up anesthesia, it's like they're just separate. They're just like putting a block between the brain and how did they figure that out? I can't wrap my head around it. And the fact that you can do it locally, or you could just do the whole body.
Yeah.
It's almost like the plumbing system the inspector was talking about with me. No, we could just turn off this faucet for a little bit.
Yeah,
we could turn off this section of the house. If we drill into this like micro millimeter part of your spine, we can do it down here with like an epidural. Like I just can't believe it. And because I read a lot of history books, and you just start to think about like battlefield hospitals in the Civil War, and like, holy shit, man. I think that is overlooked as the most important innovation of like it's almost like before anesthesia and after is what it feels like.
Yeah, it's truly when you think about it, how far we've come
it's crazy.
So impressive.
Nina just got in the show they can't save everybody, but it allows them to try. It's pretty much like anybody that comes into the hospital, well, we can knock them out real quick and we'll do our best. It's just like, imagine them trying to do that without that. It's like then that place, everyone's just screaming bloody murder. It's unbelievable.
On Tuesday morning, I had to take Nina. She had her first cavity. And it's funny because they went in and like, put the little nose piece on for the laughing gas.
Yeah.
And they like put her on, 10 seconds later, they're like, oh yeah, she's not going to be able to feel anything. I'm like, she's laying on her back watching Bluey, the TV on the ceiling.
TV, like in the ceiling.
Yeah.
I like that innovation at the dentist office too.
And
you got the screen in the ceiling tiles. Good stuff.
And then they just start like, drilling this thing out, and she's just like not feeling anything and just like still completely zoned into Bluey. I'm like, this is crazy, man. Medicine. Yep. Anyway, that's it, Neil. I appreciate it. Thanks again to Mr. Jeezy. Please hit us up on that listener line, 833-330-8725. And I'm monitoring it, guys. Make sure you choose the right trap drop mailbox. And I'm going to get a couple of them over to the Chop Boys. I know the Seamsters are hot. We're not to Memorial Day yet, but that's when the real baseball season starts. My beloved Stars just won the first game of the series last night. I'm pumped about that. Absolutely.
Oh God, how about the Knicks gassing it last night? Unbelievable.
What a turnaround from the Pacers.
Teams that were up in the playoffs in the history of the NBA. A team up 14 points with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Basically at the end of the game, are 977-1 in winning that game, and the one is last night with the Knicks blowing it. That's tough.
God, that's incredible. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot. This is primetime sports going on, which I really like as we continue to gear up next week for U.S. Women's Open and then U.S. Open at Oakmont. Very, very pumped at where we're at. Anyway, that's it for the booth. Thanks for tuning in.
Good being with you, Cody. Good session.
Hit it.
Bang-a-lang!